everyone, this is Daughter Darkness, and today we've got the final full Kingdom Hearts game before Kingdom Hearts 3 and the penultimate game retrospective. We're really getting close to Kingdom Hearts 3, aren't we? So Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance released in March 2012 for the 10th anniversary of the first game in Japan, before releasing in July of the same year everywhere else, and for first it was actually released outside of North America before inside, and it was then remastered as part of the 2.8 collection in 2017. So Birth by Sleep, released in 2010, it sold very well. It kind of matched the critical acclaim of Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 as well, so it was a no-brainer really for the team behind it to be given another crack at Kingdom Hearts. And by this point, plans had started to be made for Kingdom Hearts 3. Most of the kind of backstories that Nomura wanted to tell were told, so it was about bringing the series forward. But with Versus 13 still languishing in development, there were certain plot elements of the series after Kingdom Hearts 2 that he wanted to kind of get out of the way before Kingdom Hearts 3, in particular this Mark of Mastery exam and kind of setting up the whole Guardians of Light and the Seekers of Darkness and all that kind of stuff. So an idea came to basically do what they'd done with Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, where they had Chain of Memories as the bridge between them. They were going to do the same thing and have a bridge game between them. Apparently they've been impressed with what they've seen of the Nintendo 3DS up to this point, so they decided that that was where it was going to be, and it kind of makes sense that Chain of Memories had been on the big Nintendo handheld of the day. Dream Drop Distance was going to be the same. As far as the title goes, each individual word is supposed to reference a theme of the game. So dreams being obvious, drop referencing the drop system that allows you to go through both stories sort of at the same time, and then distance to represent the distance between the two main characters as you go through the game. Nomura has always said that it's just a coincidence that this came out as 3Ds, but how much you want to believe that is up to you. And as for the main characters, it was Sora and Riku that were going to be decided. This made sense, that they were the ones who you could play as in the first bridge game in Chain of Memories, so it made sense to do the same thing here. Plus, it had been a long time since we'd had a game about actual Sora, so we were a bit overdue. The gameplay was always going to be similar to Birth by Sleep. It was run off the same engine as it, and development time was quite short, so there wasn't really time for grand sweeping changes. But it was also partly used as a testing ground for things used in future games. So flow motion is an obvious example. Reality shift is something else that seems to be finding its form in Kingdom Hearts 3 in the form of attraction flow. And the idea of setting it in a dream world was kind of out of logistics, that they wanted it to be about this Mark of Mastery exam. So not about some world-ending threat, but they still wanted you to be able to go and explore Disney worlds and that kind of stuff. So having sleeping worlds where you're sort of on a small scale, but you're still able to travel, and you've actually got a reason to go everywhere, kind of just made things flow a little bit better. And finally, there was a decision to have a new type of enemy. So the first game had Heartless, the second game, Kingdom Hearts 2 even, had Heartless and Nobodies, Birth by Sleep had Unversed, and the plan was for Dream Drop Distance to have Heartless and Nobodies as well. But eventually, after playing Nintendogs of all games, Nomura decided that what he wanted was a system where you could have two versions of the same enemy type. So you would have some that could be allies and then some that could be enemies, and you would use the allies as both companions in battle and also to earn abilities and that sort of thing from them. And the game was announced at E3 2010 as the Kingdom Hearts 3D demo, before being officially rebranded and announced as Dream Drop Distance in January 2011. Development went quite rapidly to launch. It has the shortest development time of any Kingdom Hearts game, but it was still marketed on being as the same level as Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. And also, Tai Yasui goes on about saying it's Kingdom Hearts 2 and Birth by Sleep but improved, and well, however much you want to believe if that's true or not, it is up to you. But Dream Drop Distance is quite an important game in my time as a Kingdom Hearts fan, because 358 Days Over 2 had left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. I wasn't really that interested in where the series was going afterwards. That's why I kind of was passed by Birth by Sleep, and probably partly why I didn't even know Recoded existed. But then I got a 3DS for Christmas in 2011, and then I got some money for my birthday in 2012, which my birthday was 5 days before the European release of Dream Drop Distance, so I was kind of looking, okay, I'll get a 3DS game, and I saw this thing, Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance. And the two things that jumped out at me, firstly, you could play as Sora again, which is a kind of thing that I already had over days, but also that there was going to be a Hunchback of Notre Dame world in the game, and if anyone doesn't know, the Hunchback of Notre Dame is my favourite Disney film, so I thought, okay, yeah, I'll give this one a go, I'll pre-order it. So I then got it on the day it released, and instantly I kind of fell in love with the game. It's not perfect, of course, and the faults of it have become more and more apparent as I played it more, but it really kind of recaptured at least part of the magic in a way that no Kingdom Hearts game has since Kingdom Hearts 2. But of course, as the last game was days, it was quite the leap regardless of that. And as the time's gone on, I've still had a bit of an attachment to the game, partly for that reason. I do still think that it is the best Kingdom Hearts handheld. However, I am aware that it has some major issues, and the fact that it was kind of rushed into development sort of leaves off with a lot of the things being quite raw. However, I think it does quite a lot of things right, and it's special for me. So, combat-wise, it borrows the Command X system from Birth by Sleep, but it does have a different progression system, and it's one that I actually think works a lot better, even if it's a little bit weird when you're looking at it to start with. The Dream Eater system is the way that you progress through the game in terms of levels, and I know this kind of turns people off, i.e. that you're having to go through these really cutie creatures and stuff to unlock any abilities, but I think it ends up working off a lot more balanced than it would in Birth by Sleep, because in Birth by Sleep, with the way command melding's set up, you can kind of get endgame abilities pretty much straight away, so you're just walking through the game. Whereas in this, at least, you need certain Dream Eaters to unlock certain things. Now, you can get Leaf Bracer from the first Dream Eater you get, which I think is just there in case someone didn't bother with the Dream Eater stuff at all, but to get things like Once More and Second Chance and EXP boost and that sort of thing that you might want to face bigger challenges later in the game, you're going to need some better Dream Eaters, and you're not going to be able to get them until you get to the worlds where you can get their respective Dream Pieces. And I just think that's a much better way. The ability link system kind of feels like a more natural progression than command melding, which is very trial and error. Now, there is an element of that in Dream Drop Distance. I think the drop system and the way that that kind of handles the forecasts and everything can make things a little bit tricky. But for the most part, yeah, I think this works a lot better than Birth by Sleep. And that's really the thing with Dream Drop Distance. And the mini review section of Birth by Sleep was a bit shorter than the other ones. And that's partly because a lot of what I have to say about Birth by Sleep is in reference to this, because Dream Drop Distance has a lot of the same shortcomings as Birth by Sleep, but it kind of works for me a little bit better. This is one of the reasons why. I think the pet simulator aspect is fun enough. I like the idea of having creatures that act as both your allies and stat boosts and abilities and that sort of thing. Plus, it's nice to actually be able to see what you're going to unlock before you get it. But the strange thing is that I found because I tend to criticize command melding as a system as being quite broken, the response I often get is that, well, command melding at least is better than Water Barrel. Well, it's not the same thing, is it? Water Barrel is a mini game that you can use to basically accelerate how quickly you learn abilities from the Dream Eaters. It's not the progression system itself, it's just a game to help you. The equivalent to Water Barrel would be Command Board, and while neither are great, I would play Water Barrel 20 times before I would play Command Board once. But fortunately in both games, you don't have to do that, it's completely optional. You can earn the link points in this game or experience for commands in Birth by Sleep perfectly fine from just combat, so I'm not really that bothered about that. I tend to use Water Barrel a little bit to supplement command growth, whereas Command Board I try to avoid like the plague unless I'm going for a platinum, which means I've done more Command Board than any human being ever should, but still. Then we get to the actual combat, and in terms of the way that combat feels, it's certainly not as good as Kingdom Hearts 1 or 2, not even close. But I think it feels a lot better than Birth by Sleep, and both games are extremely like floaty and quite stiff. There's gaps between your combos, and you're stopping in the air when you do an air combo and all that kind of stuff. But this, I do think it feels a lot better because at least Sora and Riku have quite short attacks. Now, Aqua especially kind of has quite long individual attacks. That means that if you do a single combo, there's quite a lot of time where you're almost out of control. I'd say Dream Drop Distance kind of feels more on the level of Chain of Memories. That it's sort of like Kingdom Hearts 1, but a little bit slower, which I think is functional, and it's not great, but it's certainly better, I think, than Birth by Sleep. Now, I know a lot of people, in fact, pretty much everyone, I don't think I've ever seen anyone who agrees with me on this, but most people seem to say that Riku is the best character to control in this game. And I wholeheartedly disagree. I think Sora feels way better to control. His combos feel a lot faster. Not fast, but faster. Riku just feels quite a lot stiffer, I think. And some of the commands just feel like they flow better with Sora. And I think the example I would mainly give is Spark Dive, which is an early command that you get, but can be quite useful throughout the game. And I find with Sora, it just feels a lot more natural and fits into other things that you're doing a lot better. But on the whole, I think that's something that does distinguish this from Birth by Sleep in a positive way, is that it feels a little bit less separate when you're doing combos and commands. You can sort of move between the two a little bit faster. Recoded does it better than either of them, but for the most part I think this one is better than Birth by Sleep in that regard. Because Sora and Riku have fairly short attacks, it means that the knock-on effect of floatiness, that you're vulnerable and you can't really control yourself completely, is less. But Dream Drop Distance, the one thing where it falls apart, I think, compared to Birth by Sleep is in the enemy design. I think this is where the speed of development kind of catches up with Dream Drop Distance more than anything else. Because in the 3DS version, this is especially bad, because in that version, enemies do not stagger when you hit them. Only commands can actually affect an enemy's momentum. Now in the PS4 version they did fix that. However, Dream Drop Distance still has a problem where they tend to have quite a lot of enemies on you. And they're quite big enemies quite a lot of the time, and they're, especially early game before you get abilities like Second Chance and whatever, there are lots of attacks that they can do that will basically wipe you out. You can get frozen in place and then just killed, and you're going to find that you're going to have a lot of deaths just from stuff like that, where you just get comboed to death before you can really react to it, and it makes the game feel quite frustrating. And I think that's the main thing in regards to Birth by Sleep where this game falls short a bit. I will say Birth by Sleep's enemy design isn't great or anything, but in this it is a little bit worse. And I think what probably makes it worse and more frustrating is the way the worlds are designed. Now I'll get onto that specifically later, because I really like the way the worlds are designed, but because the rooms are quite big, but it still uses the same checkpoint system as the rest of the series, i.e. if you die in a room, you go back to the start of the room. It means that you're probably going to have done quite a lot, and then you can die suddenly out of nowhere, and then you have to go back to the start of the room, which isn't a problem necessarily if the room is like quite small, as they are in Kingdom Hearts 2 or Birth by Sleep. But in this game, the rooms are massive at times, so you are probably going to end up having to retread a lot of ground. And this really gets worse later on in the game when you go to like the world that never was, and basically any enemy is almost like a mini boss. But like BBS, in the end, you basically revolve around using commands and spamming commands that are overpowered to overcome the fact that your enemies are a bit broken too. Famously or infamously, this game has Balloonra, which is probably the single most powerful ability in the entire Kingdom Hearts series. Way more powerful than anything else in your arsenal, so it ends up super unbalanced. But to be fair, it's not like the commands in Birth by Sleep are balanced. The Mind Squares and the Thunder Surges are still way more useful than anything else and can basically obliterate anything in your path. I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea a lot of people seem to think, which is that the game is unplayable without Balloonra. I don't think it is. I think your other commands are good enough. It's just Balloonra is better, so it's the best option at any time. But I find if I limit my use of Balloonra, it doesn't make me like hate the game more or anything. However, again, like Birth by Sleep, the boss fights in this game are pretty awful. Lots of relentlessly attacking big bosses, especially bad on the 3DS when you can't actually see because the camera's right up Sora's ass and the screen is obviously very small. On the PS4 it's way better, but still all the bosses are pretty bad. Wargoyle being particularly bad, and of course young Xehanort. It's one of those things like Birth by Sleep has quite bad bosses too, and I think it has the worst boss in the series with Mysterious Figure, but Dream Drop Distance's story bosses are a little bit worse. So it kind of swings in roundabouts there. However, I think there are other improvements to combat and such, like your dodge rolls are not infinite and spammable. OP attacks, like Sora's Link attacks with Dream Eaters and that kind of thing, which I guess would be the equivalent of like a limit or a shot lock in a previous game. But they don't recharge instantly. They're not nearly as kind of overwhelmingly destructible as shot locks and that kind of thing. And of course that does have the knock-on effect that the command deck feels more broken, but I think that's the main thing between Dream Drop Distance and Birth by Sleep, is that the command deck is broken in both of them, but in Dream Drop Distance everything else around it isn't quite as broken. One thing that is flow motion. I like the concept of it a lot. I think it's a great addition to the series. I'm really glad it's returning in Kingdom Hearts 3. But I'm also really glad it's returning in Kingdom Hearts 3 in a way more limited form, because it kind of negates the point of platforming. It gives you kind of instant exploration abilities where you can basically go anywhere in a map while providing you with really powerful attacks straight from the start. And on the whole, I do still say that flow motion is a positive addition to the game. It just makes the game feel a lot more fun to play through, and it kind of distinguishes it from the past games. It's just that in terms of execution, it can lead to being another thing that you can sort of fall back on all the time. The worlds I mentioned briefly, but I think they're great for the most part. Yes, there's the problem with like dying when you're quite a long way into a big room and having to start the big room from the start. But I think they're a lot more open than previous games. There's a lot more verticality than there really is in any game since Kingdom Hearts 1, apart from very, very brief parts of 2 and Birth by Sleep. Visually, they're a little bit bare, but that's kind of down to hardware limitations. I think in terms of the actual design, there's definitely an argument to be made that Dream Drop Distance has the best world design in the Kingdom Hearts series so far, because Kingdom Hearts 3, from the looks of things, is blowing it out of the water, but I mean, we'll see. So yeah, that's kind of where it stands as far as the game. It's been a lot of comparison with Birth by Sleep because they have a lot of the same strengths and weaknesses, but I do think that a few things were ironed out in Dream Drop Distance that make the game just feel a lot better to play through, for me at least. But I think the short development time compared to Birth by Sleep does kind of leave off with a situation where things are a lot more raw, but I think better on the whole, especially on the PS4 version when they made steps to improve enemy design. And then we come to the story, which tends to be the thing that people really hate in Dream Drop Distance, whether they like the game or not. But I tend to defend it quite a lot, because I think that the complaints ultimately tend to boil down to because time travel. The game is bad, the story is bad because time travel. It's like it ruins the series. This thing, it just single-handedly wrecks the entire series. But when you actually play the game, time travel's only mentioned in a couple of cutscenes anyway, but it's basically just there to bring back the villains. It's a way to have Ansem and Xemnas and young Xehanort and that lot appearing in Kingdom Hearts 3. That's it. Like, it's specifically been done very limited and very restricted, so that's its only purpose. And I think, and as far as setting up a final battle, it does a pretty good job. This whole Guardians of Light, Seekers of Darkness thing is a fairly good one. I've seen people excited about that, but they aren't happy about Dream Drop Distance doing the heavy lifting. Is the story a bit convoluted? Yes, it is, but that's because it's bringing together different pieces of the whole series, which always were a little bit, and when you put them together, it looks very convoluted. But on the character side, Riku is great. He is, of course, the hero of this game, and it's nice to see how far he's come from Kingdom Hearts 1, when he's basically a villain, to Chain of Memories, where he's struggling a bit more. Kingdom Hearts 2, he's helping from the shadows, and now he's the hero that he always should have been. and he's great. Young Xehanort as well is great. I think Ben Diskin's performance in this game is arguably the best performance of any voice actor in the Kingdom Hearts series, and he's a really great character. And that's the thing, you tend to see people don't like the fact that time travel exists, but they like young Xehanort, so that's always fun. And as for Sora, I can certainly see the issues that people have with his characterization in this game. And I think that a lot of this comes down to individual badly written lines, or possibly badly translated. Bear in mind this had a shorter localization time than any other game as well, but there's things like when he gets grabbed by the guard things in the grid, and he's like, that is so unfriendly. It sounds really stupid, but in terms of what he's actually doing, he's not really that different from the rest of the series. Like, he's very headstrong and kind of overly trusting, thinks with his heart first and that kind of stuff. But it's not really that different from what he does in Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. It's just normally in those games you've got Goofy going, maybe let's not do that. So yeah, I think it doesn't really make him feel out of character, at least as far as I'm concerned. Individual lines are badly done and make it sound worse than it is, but I think it does a mostly good job of showing that Sora is vulnerable when he is on his own, as he is in this game. He needs other people, and if it sets up character growth in Kingdom Hearts 3 where he becomes a bit more independent, a little bit less completely happy-go-lucky, then it works fine for me. So on the whole, this has actually ended up longer than any other video, but this is a game with some major issues, and I can certainly see why people label it as one of the weaker Kingdom Hearts games, but it's just got a lot of things here that really do work for me. It's a game I've got a bit of a soft spot for, and when given the most direct comparison between this and Birth by Sleep, I think this one comes off favourably, and it's in general an improvement on it. Dream Drop Distance is notable for being the last game released before Kingdom Hearts 3, or the last full console game, and it's obviously important as the development team moves straight from Dream Drop Distance onto Kingdom Hearts 3. They've developed some of the ideas that were experimented with there, although the game does seem to have been a bit divisive. So Dream Drop Distance, what do you think of it? Please leave your thoughts in the comment section below the video, and while you're down there, please like this video if you did, and if you liked it, then check out my other videos and subscribe to this channel. And as always, thank you for watching.